school district would not have told me. It must be me who might have misunderstood. That being said, I have our superintendent sitting in the audience, and I'm teasing her. But that being said, it was my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that one of the reasons that we were doing this study is that we were going to put somebody totally in charge of looking at the districts, and I thought the districts were certainly the on-the-road districts, so they would be Kenai, Anchorage, Fairbanks, and the Mat-Su. And our goal was to align our contracts so that we had a certain volume that would make sense to be able to be competitive with contractors in the lower 48. That being said, we're supposed to be aligned at about this point. And I didn't hear you necessarily saying that. I mean, I heard us talking about differences, and we might and we could, but I thought the goal was to take advantage of competitive advantages. So can you catch me up? Are we going to do that? Do we have somebody that's been in charge that actually looked at it and looked at all these contracts, put them together, and are we putting out a contract that Kenai, Mat-Su, Anchorage, and Fairbanks will do this together to get more bang for the buck?
So you are correct. We do have a position that is in charge of pupil transportation. They have worked with the districts. We have one contract that each of the large districts could use. One of the complexities is that this is not the state's contract, it's the contract of the school district. And so there still needs to be flexibility for the school district to go out and put that contract out to bid. And what the 5 school districts have agreed is they've agreed to the terms of the contract, and they've agreed to use a consistent format and terms in their contract that's been drafted. They have agreed to report back to the department so we can get some data to see how things are moving along. But each district will still have to be the entity that puts this contract out. And when Anchorage, Mat-Su, and Fairbanks expire in 2016, they have agreed to stay on the same cycle, but it's likely that in Anchorage, they're going to need new buses. And that's going to change how a contractor bids on that contract compared to Mat-Su that sort of went through this 5 years ago, and if they put that contract out to bid and their current contractor bids on it, those buses are going to be running fairly problem-free for another 5 years. So, yes, there's somebody in charge of this. Yes, the districts have agreed to stay on the same cycle and get on the same cycle as they can, and Kenai has some specific challenges there. They've agreed to the same terms, and the districts had an open house and invited vendors from down south to come up, and they gave them some tours of the districts. And
Elizabeth, I don't mean to cut you off. I guess the bottom line is we, the state, are paying for the transportation, and it certainly was my thought that we would get more bang for our buck if we aligned our contracts, and that we got one contractor up here, and it allowed us to be able to bid all as one. So what I'm hearing you say is that's not the case. We certainly have the opportunity to. I'm a little bit disappointed because I think in 3 years we knew what our bus routes are. We know where these things are. I don't think it should have taken us 3 years. Certainly think it takes time to align all the contracts in the area. So I think I understand. I'm a little bit disappointed that that we couldn't have combined them, or maybe that it just didn't happen. So Anyway, with that being said, Representative Wilson. Did you have a question?
Okay, so I was in the legislature when we discussed this, and here was the story that we were receiving at the time, and that was, and I believe it was Kenai, who talked about only one person, one company would bid because to get buses up here was an enormous amount. That was a big cost. So unless we took the 5 big districts to where they had a contract, would it be big enough to be able to get more than one vendor? So I guess I'm trying to figure out where did this get lost in translation? Because to do what you're telling us, I mean, everybody already knew that. They could have worked on their contracts together. So I don't understand why we can't have one contract with all the big districts if they agree that's where they want to go. So why can't we do that? And if you're not the right person who can answer it, who do we need to call?
Well, like the rest of, I think, could that happen? I suppose under some scenario that could, but that was never the understanding of the Department of Education. Just like every other thing the school districts do it under local control. What we're trying to do, and we are progressing, is we're building competition not because there's one contract, but because we're aligning the contracts and the market to invite in somebody who would want to come into the market because we do business the same and we're easy to navigate and understandable.
Thank you.
So who? Just a minute.
One contract, the market is consistent.
Right. So who pays for school transportation for the buses now? What entity does that come out of my tax dollar in Fairbanks, or does the state pay for that, or does the federal government pay?
It's 100% state general fund. And It's an appropriation of approximately $78 million a year, and it's distributed to all of the school districts that participate in pupil transportation, which is most of them.
Okay.
No,
that's good. I just the answer is the state, and it's $78 million for, I'm assuming, the entire state, not just those, but the majority of that would be the big school districts. So if the state is paying the majority of the bill, and if others are pitching in, it's probably because it costs so much and they have to supplement that amount of money. So I remember this conversation, so again, I don't know where it got lost at, and maybe I'm asking you to go back and do it correctly, but the whole purpose is to be able to bring that $78 million down and make it so the districts didn't have to put some of their, and I know Fairbanks does as well, we put money that's supposed to go into the school education instructional level goes to busing. They've made that comment a couple times. So what would it take for the department to go back and say, we want to put you already got the contract, so you've got the big work done, to go back to the 5 main districts and say, would you be willing, if you're saving money, which I can't imagine that they wouldn't do it, put out an RFP for all 5 districts at the same time? What would stop you from doing that?
Well, it would shift from local control to a school district entity to a school district liability, and it would shift that to a centralized state contract system liability.
Okay.
So I think that you would first want to explore, what would change by having 5 school districts aggregated by the state of Alaska into one contract. What changes would come from that?
Did you say aggravated? Was that the terminology?
Very different. The state would.
Maybe I'm just aggravated. Maybe it's the wrong person. Okay, so let me try one more time here, because first of all, you have districts right now who have to use money, operating money, okay? And I think we could ask during public testimony on one district, and I'll call my own as well, that are now paying more into busing because the state is not covering the entire bill. So if you have a contract